Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 53 of Teaching Tales, the podcast completely devoted to sharing stories from the world of education. I am once again Brent Coley, elementary school principal in beautiful Southern California. And it's been about a month since the last episode. Things have been very busy, but we're back with a new episode, and I am stoked to have joining me today, Eduardo Rivera. Eduardo, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. As I said, it's been, we were talking before we went live, this is a busy time of year.
It is.
And we are recording, what's today, November 8th. This is a long stretch of the school year. For any educator listening right now, you're nodding your head right now.
Yep.
You know what we're talking about.
For the kids and the teachers, we're getting antsy.
Exactly. It's not just the students. It's we love what we do.
We do.
But it's a long stretch. So I'm looking forward to a 3-day weekend and sleeping in here. But Eduardo, for anyone who's not familiar with you and your work, just before we get started with sharing some stories, tell listeners, tell my mom and dad and anyone else who's listening, who is Eduardo Rivera?
So I am currently a integration technology specialist. I just refer myself as Tectosa out of the classroom. I taught for 5 years at my alma mater, Cathedral City High School, and so kind of a local grown kid, left, kind of came back. Now I'm 5 years in this position as a Tectosa, and yeah, I've been, love the community, obviously came back, and now I'm raising a family out in the community where I grew up in. So yeah, teacher all around, love the kids, love the community.
I think that is so cool. I was reading on your website before we started chatting, and just the whole local boy. You taught at the school that you went to, that you graduated from. That is really cool.
Yeah, I get the question all the time: did you teach with the teachers that were your teachers, right? Are you? And yes, and then you can't uncall them, right, by like Mr. Right? You can't. It's just still too weird for me. But yeah, it was nice. It was really good, and they're so welcoming, and I think it gave me a little advantage, being a first year teacher, knowing what it was like to grow up in that valley, and then to then ask the kids to do things. I can say, hey, I sat in that exact same chair. I know what it's like. It gave me a little bit more cred right off the bat.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited about kind of the topic for this episode. When we've kind of chatted in the months leading up to, and we finally scheduled a time to do this, which I'm thrilled about. You want to talk about gamification and video game. I mean, for anyone listening, if you've got kids, video games are a huge thing. I mean, I've got 2 kids. My son is an 8th grader, and he loves video games, and that's not an uncommon thing. And you're going to talk to us about and share some stories about how you're leveraging that for educational purposes. So
yes, so we're just a little bit just video games and just kind of what they've meant to me. Like I said, growing up in this area, our area, Palm Springs, always kind of gets looked at as this really nice area. People come to Palm Springs, right? But I know it as the service industry where I grew up in, right? My mom worked very hard to maintain our livelihood here with one of 6 siblings. And so let's just say I played a lot of video games when I was younger, because it was kind of what I would call looking back on it now, it was an escapism, right? It was a little bit of getting away from what was going on at home. And it was something that essentially kept my attention for a really extended amount of time. Now, as I'm getting older, obviously the video games aren't as prevalent in my life as much as I would want it to be. But now I get to kind of re-experience some of the fun of playing video games with my kids. And so for me, it's really, it has that escapism. It's a little bit of that, but really there's some lessons that I didn't realize I was going through as I'm playing video games. Things that if we had in the classroom would be super valuable, like the idea of never giving up and trying over and over again until you pass that level, right? If we can kind of harness some of that and trying over and over again until you achieve whatever academic goal you're trying to accomplish there. So for me, again, it's kind of a little bit of that escapism, but really there's there's a little bit of those lessons that I want to now share with my students, or our district in this case. And so we've done a little bit of that with a couple programs.
That is, gosh, I've never really thought about it like that until you just mentioned that. Just that whole, I mean, how many hours have you spent? Did I spend growing up? Has my son spent? And kids now, like you said, trying to pass that level. And if you look, if we could measure the perseverance and the grit that kids have in video games, gosh, if we could transfer that over into the classroom, how great would that be? Before we move on, this is like a side note. I'm curious, what video games did you grow up playing?
So so for me, it's the Zelda franchise. Anything Zelda related is just, for some reason, it just, something in my soul lights up when I see anything Zelda related. So it's like the first Zelda, and then growing up, Ocarina of Time. That's like one of the best games of all time. And then obviously anything on beyond that, anything Zelda has been like, that's my jam.
All right. Yeah.
What about you? What do you got? What's your?
I've got a few years on you, so like when I remember, I'm 47, so I remember like my first video was the Atari console, and I remember the day I got Asteroids on my Atari, and that was like, oh my gosh, Asteroids. So it's video games have come a long way. When I watch my son on his Xbox and I just look at the graphics, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I grew up with Pong,
right?
Asteroids and Centipede, and yes, and you're. It looks like it's not even a television. It looks like you're in some real world. It's absolutely incredible. So So what exactly are you doing? Like share kind of the story of how are you bringing that into
So kind of is fun. So again, the idea of gamification, of playing video games, it's something that obviously I enjoy, but this idea was what spawned what we called Chrome Warrior at the time. And it was our professional development for our teachers. And so that's a Ludo now. At some point it was called Chrome Warrior. Yep. That's kind of where it began. We wanted to gamify this idea of professional development. We wanted the badges, the points, trying over and over again to accomplish something just for the sake of accomplishing it. Not necessarily for pay, because we do have some of that where a lot of our PD is, if you're going to do PD, you have to pay. And so we wanted to create something autonomous where teachers wanted to do it, and they wanted to do it on their own time, and just for the sake of learning, for the sake of doing it, to get better at something. And so it initially started as that little gamified profession with the points and all that. And then it kind of spawned into what we just released now is Cyber Champions, which is that same platform with the same ideas of gamification and points and all that, but our students are it's so much easier to get them. So with my teachers, it's like, hey, like, let's play this game, we have some points and there's some cool prizes if you play along. With our kids, no one ever had like a Cyber Champions orientation. We put it out there and said, if you finish this game, you get free Wi-Fi on your phone, right? And we had, and this was only for high school, we had 1,700 kids playing, just, at least logged into the game and played. I'm not going to say that everyone was playing the game all the way through, but had logged in, had started playing, doing some of the first set of levels. And so, again, the points and the badges, all that stuff, I'm not sure how much of a incentive that was. Maybe it really was just the free Wi-Fi, but it was really neat to see them, and they would send us what we do achievements. It's like their proof that they're doing something. They would send it to us. We would look at it and would say, all right, that's kind of missed the mark on what we're asking. And we'd give it back to them. And then they would try it again. They would do it again and again until they got it.
To work on mastery.
Back to mastery, yeah. And, it was, for me, and I've said this in other presentations, it's like, being out of the classroom, it was really neat to see some of those conversations, right? Like I got to have that interaction with them. And, some kids really got deep into, what it's like to be a girl on the internet. It's it's not that fun because guys are always saying weird things, right? I had no idea that they would open to that level. So it started this discourse between me and my team, and then these students that were playing the game with, and they don't know who was grading their stuff. It was more, they just saw that someone was responding to what they were submitting.
So what kind of, I'm intrigued by it, but my district uses a Ludo as well.
Yes.
for staff development, but the fact that your students are doing this, what kind of games and lessons, for lack of a better term, what were they doing? Like, what were the
tasks? Yeah. So we broke it up, and again, this is we've kind of reiterated a little bit since the initial, but when we first started, we had 4 sections that we were focusing on. So cyberbullying is the first badge. So we called it, I think, cyber bully proof. Cyber detective was our conversation about your digital footprint, right? Putting that best foot forward. Cyber detective was our, can you identify fake news? You know, how do you know if something's a legitimate resource, website? And then I always remember 3 out of the 4, and then the last one I always forget, about cyber security. So that was just like password safety, right? Who should you know, what's the difference between a white hat hacker and a black hat hacker? What are these conversations about the safety of their information and things like that? And so those are our 4 badges that we focused on. And then we had a culminating task. Now, or an end of the road kind of thing. But within each module, we asked them to, first was like consume. So go to Sprigio, which is our anonymous bullying reporting system that we have. Take a screenshot of you actually getting to the website. Then the reflection. So watch this video on, this TED Talk, and we threw it in Ed Puzzle. Take a screenshot of you completing it, answering the questions, and submit it to us. So it's like a reflection piece after watching the video, and then a culminating task. And the culminating task, this is where like the tech toastedness kind of goes in. We had them using, like Adobe Spark or Screencastify, the tools that we would ask them to use in the classroom, and they would go ahead and show us their learning through whatever that medium was. And so all those 4 modules had all 3 of those components built into it in order to go on to the next level.
Wow. And that's really cool. And you said there's 17, like you did 1,700 students when you just threw it out there.
Yeah. So I believe what we did is we gave it to the principals, and then we had with the Ludo, they helped us kind of brand it a little bit. Yeah. We had these postcards, and like we gave them to teachers to hand out. I'm not sure how many of them got handed out, but it was just really an incentive for them to just say, hey, here it is, here's the URL to it, and then go. And kids were playing, kids were looking at it and trying to finish it. And yeah, it was really neat. I still think there's obviously room for improvement, and we're reiterating because we look back at the game and we wanted to add stuff. So this second iteration now we've added for middle school, but we didn't want the middle school kids to finish the game and then get to high school and be like, oh, I just already did this. I don't want to do it. Let's do it again. So we kind of took a different approach for middle school. Still kind of the same categories, but we really focused on using Flipgrid because after talking to someone from Common Sense Media, Sue Thoughts, who's she's amazing, and she was like, well, what are they really learning from doing these tasks, and how are you facilitating the conversations? And so we thought, well, let's use Flipgrid for the conversation piece, and we used the Common Sense Media digital dilemmas. So, you see a kid on Instagram, the girls are rating themselves, and, what do you do in that scenario? And so now we're essentially we're hoping that our teachers, and we just released it actually, the middle school version this last week. So we're hoping that we can get teachers to moderate and have them be part of that conversation. So it is that back and forth between, and I'm hoping that's a little more powerful than just us responding back to them, but, teachers within the classroom that they see around, listening to their answer to all that. So,
well, gosh, I spent all of my teaching career at elementary. I'm now a principal in elementary, but I did spend 2 years as an assistant principal at the middle school level. And when you said we brought it down, I mean, it's obviously incredibly relevant at the high schoal level, but yes, just those 2 years that I had at the middle school level, you mentioned like girls rating themselves on Instagram. I mean, gosh, I won't put a number on it, but the percentage of the issues that I dealt with that had to do with online activity, whether it was inappropriate texts or, I mean, you mentioned the cyberbullying and just doing things that just weren't, that kids don't really, I didn't think, they don't know. So yeah, I applaud what you're doing here because, and doing it in a relevant way. Like you said, like giving those digital dilemmas, like role play. What would you do?
here's a scenario, right?
Yeah.
And what I like about the digital dilemmas too on Common Sense Media is that they take a social emotional learning. So, they cover like empathy. So, how would you feel if you're in that scenario and you're the one being bullied, use this lens. And so that's the questions that we put in Flipgrid are essentially the questions that the Common Sense Media would ask, but, we were just facilitating it through the Flipgrid component.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any feedback? As you said, 1,700 logged on. It doesn't necessarily mean 1,700 have finished everything. But have you spoken with any students or received any feedback from students?
Yeah. So we did. So at the end of the last task is essentially like an essay, which turned out to be a little bit more. And I'm surprised that we even had kids finishing it. I thought that was going to be too hard for them, just because I wouldn't necessarily write an essay. I feel like that because that wasn't just the thing that I don't enjoy writing, but they would write these essays about what they learned on their journey. So that was the last part of the game, is to tell us what they got from the Cyber Champion experience. And a lot of them were like, it kind of opened my eyes. I didn't even think about those kind of things. It was good to revisit some of these things, because this is what it's like to be on the web, right? And so that feedback has been good. I think we can definitely learn a lot from polling more of our students to figure out what was effective about the game. And I'm hoping with this next iteration we'll have a little bit more of that feedback and throw it into our end of the year survey that we do with our 8th grade kids. And so we'll see kind of what growth too, because what did that change, even having them in this game? Does does it improve any actual skills for them kind of going forward? So yeah, there's a lot that we're hoping.
That'll be interesting. Like once, like you said, you've got some time with this in play to actually see, are you seeing a decrease in online inappropriate activity, cyberbullying, stuff like that?
Exactly. Yeah.
That
it will, and so it is in a Ludo, I believe. So that would be awesome if you took a look at it and see what you thought of it. It's in there. So if you wanted to add it to your game, I think you can. I'm pretty sure it's open for anyone, because we there was like a minute there when we're like, do we just keep this for ourselves, or like what do we do with this? After because there's a little sense of like, what do we want people looking at this game and telling us that it's not good or not? But as I'm learning, it's just put it out there, and kind of see what people say, and they take that feedback and make it better.
Or this could be something that some district is just like, oh my gosh, I was about to recreate the wheel and you have already done it. I mean, one of the great things about this is, as I'm listening to you share the story of all of these students who, with the only incentive was free Wi-Fi, and that was pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and when I say only, I mean that's a big deal for some. But I think that just goes to show that if we as teachers or administrators or TOSAs or whatever our position is, if we put learning in a format that is, I'll use the word cool. I mean, like when I was in the classroom, Tony Vincent, my virtual mentor, I've talked about him before, he showed me how to make iPod flashcards. It was just taking PowerPoint presentations, and this is back when iPods like classic with the tilt wheel or whatever it was called. I mean, we would make flashcards, and we would put those, and the kids would put them on their iPods. They're flashcards, but because we put it in a format that was cool, in the kids, I get to study on my iPod. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And you're taking something like cyberbullying, cyber detective, cyber citizenship, things like that, but you're putting in something that's relevant for kids. They're doing this on their own, not because they have to per se, but because, hey, this might actually be fun.
Yeah. I mean, and part of it too, our teachers are always impacted. There's so many things that they're having to do, right? Make sure you're taking this assessment, you're doing this short cycle. And that's part of why we wanted it to be kind of an autonomous thing where the kids take ownership of it, because we don't want teachers to have to, if they wanted to, if they wanted to take our course and like have the kids run through it, that'd be awesome. But they don't have to, right? They don't have to be actively saying, play this game, do this task. I almost feel like that would actually probably be detrimental, right? Once we told the kids that they had to, then it might be the opposite of what we want them to do.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, our district has started using a Ludo, and I'm in the Murrieta Valley Unified School District, and they've called it the Valley of the Lost Gems, and they've taken like a Indiana Jones theme.
Yeah, I love that one.
And it's been really cool because it hasn't been for the students, it's been for teachers and for staff members, and they're constantly adding to it. But it's like, oh, you want to learn how to use Excel? You want to learn how to use Flipgrid? You want to learn whatever it is, and they can self-pace, but it's not the type of thing that they've told teachers you must.
Exactly. Yeah.
But for those out there who are looking for it, and like, gosh, I don't know how to use a spreadsheet. I don't know how to do this, but I've heard that there's cool things you can do with it. There's now something for them to do. And the district has offered some incentives. Free Wi-Fi is not going to be enough for staff members. but they've done, I mean, they've got t-shirts, and I want to say, I'm pretty sure, like, if they get to a certain level, I mean, they've got some
decent prizes. Yeah.
Prizes for people, which is, well, I know one of my teachers, she's done multiple levels completely on her own, and I haven't pushed that. She's just
one of my teachers is like, I just want to beat this one person. Like that was her incentive, you know. I want to get ahead of this one person. It's like,
you know, competition leads to improvement.
Well, okay, that takes us back to the gamification, right? Playing video games, that sense of competitiveness, right? You know, not only beating your own high score, right? Why do we keep you have the high score? Why not stop playing, right? You want to better yourself. Or if there's a component of being able to compete against someone else, then that's even more so. You're okay. Then I'm really motivated because I'm not going to let this person one up me. This is the thing with my kids. So I play Fortnite with my children, right? And my son is, I don't know how he got super cocky, but for some reason, he claims to be better than Ninja, right? And so then there's a sense of like, what's that?
That's pretty big claim.
Yeah, no, but he's not. I mean, I try to bring him back down to earth a little bit, but there is a sense of, even just between both of us, you know, just to like, hey, you're getting better, I want to get better too, right? I want to get to where you're at, Dad. And so, you know, having that sense of competition, you know, playing even this game that maybe it's not going to make me better in life, but why do I want to get better at this game, right? It's just that autonomy that it's hard to instill, and sometimes it does feel contrived because you feel like I'm putting a boring task into a gamified component, but at times that's as good as it's going to get. Sometimes, like that's worth it, just if they're even going to do it on their own.
Well, and I mean, I think you just hit it on the head. It's like taking the quote unquote the boring task, if you can put it in a format. I mean, because I'm thinking, okay, so what takeaway if I'm a teacher listening to this and I don't have a Ludo or I don't have some online platform like this, what could I do? And I think I talked about this in a previous episode many ones ago, but I used to review vocabulary words. I mean, toward the end of the year, I just came up with a game. I called it Define It. So these were like 100 vocabulary words that we had learned throughout the year in various contexts, whether it was social studies, language arts, all that kind of stuff, teaching fifth grade. And I just took those 100 words, put them on a index card, and taped them on the board to make a 10 by 10 grid. So picture a 10 by, almost like a multiplication, like 100 square.
Like a Jeopardy board.
Exactly. So it's a 10 by 10 grid with 100 vocabulary words. And I numbered those. So 1 through 100. I had 2 10-sided dice. I had them put into teams. And every morning we would take about 5 minutes and we would review those words by, okay, team 1, here's 2 dice. Here's 2 10-sided dice. Roll them. So they roll a 6 and a 7. So that's 67. Vocabulary word number 67. And then we would randomly pull somebody from their team. All right, Billy, what's that 67 is, whatever the word is, what does that mean? And if they could define it without any help, they got a point. If they could then put it in a sentence, they got a second point. If they didn't know how to define it, I'd give them the sentence. Then they could try to get the words from context clues.
Yeah.
They couldn't get that either. We went to another table, so everyone was paying attention because you had a chance to steal that point if the first team didn't get it.
Yeah.
And they loved it. And then I would throw in things like, today, boys and girls, Odd numbers are worth double points.
Double the points. Oh my gosh.
And factors of 9 are worth triple points and things. So they're going, oh my gosh, we got a factor. And I was taking vocabulary words.
Yeah.
And something that many would consider to be boring.
Yeah.
And I had kids like cheering to do that. And that was just, it wasn't, and there's no tech. I mean, 2 10-sided dice and 100 index cards is all it was. But it was an attempt, at least, to take something boring and put it in a format that was, like you said, the competitiveness and things like that. And you were able to, okay, this team is really behind, so this now worth 5. I mean, I could make the game to
you don't want anyone to get too far behind. Yeah, you want
to help certain people.
That's part of the gamification. Like when you're playing these games, at least like a real video game, there are hints, right? There's context clues, like you just like with your vocab. There's ways to get skills based off of just trying a different strategy, or here's this hint that'll take me down this other path. Yeah, there's a lot to be gleaned. And I mean, you look at things like Kahoot right now, right? What they're just super popular. You look at that community of people making games within Kahoot. It's massive, right? It's playing games in the classroom, but then there's a lot. And just the whole idea of just gamification has a place. Not that you do it every day, right? It's not something that you have to do every day, but there's definitely some skills that we can take from the games.
Absolutely. And like you said, just even when you've quote unquote won the game, can you better your time? Can you beat your personal record? So well, gosh, Eduardo, that's really cool. I'm gonna check out. I'm gonna go on and see if it is open, and I'm gonna check out that thing, because that's something that I could pass on to some of the people in my district as well. So
yeah,
I totally appreciate you coming on. And for anyone who is interested in following your work, where can someone go online and find it?
So my website that I use is edtecheddy.com. So you can visit there, and just at edtecheddy on Twitter. I try to post relevant stuff usually, but a lot of times it's just retweeting Google. It's been so good. You just jump on that Google train and just follow what they're doing.
There's some awesome. Good stuff there. Yeah, you've got some good resources on your website. So edtecheddy.com, and it's the same Twitter handle you said?
Yep, edtecheddy. Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Well, sir, I appreciate you taking the time and sharing good stuff. Hopefully people who are listening would be encouraged to maybe take that lesson or that concept or the thing that kind of makes the students sometimes roll their eyes like, oh boy, here we go. Is there a way to spice that up? Is there a way to gamify that? Is there a way to put it in a format that would actually make them excited about that? So Eduardo, thank you so much. Totally appreciate it. And
thank you so much, man.
You got it. You got it. Thank you. And for everyone listening, thank you. Sorry it's been about a month since our last episode, but we're back, and I've got a few other guests that we're trying to line up. So it will not be another month before we have another episode. I was going to say I promise, but you know what? Stuff happens. So I'm not promising, but the goal is it will not be another month. And as always, if you want to listen to some previous episodes, you can go to brentcoley.com on the podcast page. If you haven't subscribed, go to iTunes, Google Play. We're in Spotify as well. You can subscribe and listen there. If you like what you hear, I would appreciate it if you would drop a review. Once again, that's not about ego or anything like that, but the better, if you've got more reviews, it helps it be more visible to other listeners to get the word out. So once again, Eduardo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you for listening. And until next time, have a good one.